In my last video, I touched briefly on microtransactions, and you may have guessed I'm not too hot on the idea. Now, before I begin waxing lyrical on this, I want you to know that I am aware you have likely seen your fill of other YouTube personalities doing the same thing. Since the emergence of mainstream microtransaction culture, it's become the one topic that apparently all gamers love to hate. So taking that into account, I hope you haven't run out of steam on the topic. I certainly haven't. But for me to really say anything in this video with any kind of authority, I just want to tell you a little bit about me, so you understand what the timeline of my video games industry has been to me, and my experience of it, and how I've been able to bear witness to the drastic shifts that maybe people younger than myself have not been able to see. I'm 27, by the way. Being the age that I am means that I was one of the last generations to enjoy a games industry that had nothing to do with the internet. There wasn't that widespread expectation for limitless connectivity. What that meant for video games and the people that made them was they only ever made single-player experiences. The hit single-player games we have today can attest to the fact that titles like these are designed to be more fulfilling to a one-person, singular experience. As a result, that meant genuine developer effort went into creativity at any outlet possible for that one person. Storytelling, gameplay ideas, colour schemes, as primitive as they may now seem in the older games, were basically the three tenets that developers had to use in order to sell their game and be a success. The three foundation pillars that, done well enough, would ensure their game would sell through word of mouth alone. Sure, there were the magazines, but no better review comes from a friend that you trust. So, in the pursuit of success, with what little tools were available throughout the 90s, things had to be more creative to find that success. Developers had to think more outside the box. I once watched a very old film about World War II. It was called The Longest Day, and the few scenes that I do remember from the film was watching a building get obliterated by a tank and a top-down view of a beach of soldiers suffering a strafing run from a Nazi aircraft. Hundreds of extras running down the beach, small little explosions in the sand next to them, just told by their director to simply fall down when the plane flew over them. With what very little tools they had at the time, those scenes looked more real than anything we have in the films today. That same kind of creative lackluster can be said of the games industry. As it has matured, so too have engines like Unity and Unreal, tools that in the right hands could almost be done-for-you systems. And these days, thinking outside the box is less of a prerequisite, and the shift to this in gaming is the main thing that I have seen in my years as a gamer. Of course, all of this necessity for thinking outside the box in order to find success has already been done, and say the first FPS game ever released or the first ever open world title, those genres stuck, and delivery of AAA video games began its path, going from an infinite space of freeform creativity to dependable, done-for-you, it absolutely will make money kind of paradigms. Perfect examples of this are modern franchises that many complain are now stale, like Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty. The main takeaway from this trend in video games is an industry awareness of potential for profit. When the internet came along, that potential skyrocketed. When publishers like Activision and EA do deals with development studios to get their game out there, those developers are beholden to them for their own continued existence. There are certain parameters that developers must follow as agreed in their contract with the publisher. I once interviewed a chap called Tom Betts, who at the time was working on a PC game called Signal from Tolva. To help get this point across, I'll let him do the talking. In the interview with him, he said, "We thought about this a lot when we started off. We've even had people offer us publishing deals, but we were looking really to be able to self-fund. I think if you can do that, it's really worth thinking about. It just means that you don't have to deal with whatever restrictions might be placed on you by publishers. I know a lot of people can't be self-funded, so at that point, publishers are a viable option. Yet getting involved with a publisher means devs have to be careful. Some publishers have much stricter ideas about what your game needs to be. There was a weird thing recently whereby if you were funded by one of the European publishers, you had to put overly British things in your games, like red telephone boxes or the Union Jack. Yet here, we're making games about alien planets and we can't really put Britishness on that. One advantage that smaller teams like ourselves do have is that they don't need as much money, so a lot of studios have to go to the big publishers because they're dealing with really big overheads. Getting the money for those projects is a far more daunting task for them. Not like us, a team of around 5 people table. We did think about going with a publisher for the sake of things like future returns and the kind of publicity you get from a publisher, or without that, you can hire your own PR and do it yourself, but then that's extra workload to worry about. In the end, it's a case of looking at other publishers and seeing if what they offer is worth it. Now, when you stop to consider the astronomical costs that it takes for AAA titles to be made, it's clear to see why so many developers have to lean on the funding that these publishers provide. If those publishers, having realized the potential for leveraging the internet for profit, demand that a developer has microtransactions in order to ship the product, the developer has to put them in. And this is why DICE, Criterion and Motive are not to be blamed for the Battlefront 2 fiasco. EA are. But then you already knew that. I was thinking earlier today that the games industry could be likened to the American pharmaceutical industry. Now, I live in the UK, I'm no expert on this, so I don't pretend to use this as a solid analogy, but I just think it'll help get my upcoming point across. So on the one hand, you have these products that people absolutely want and need. In terms of the basic human nature aspect, these marvels of modern medical technology should just be available as a basic human right, but they're not. They cost a heck of a lot of money, and as I understand over there in America, this thing that people would like to have is gated off behind money. And that money, not the well-being of their fellow human beings, is what the prime objective is for those pharmaceutical companies. The difference with the games industry and its seemingly unwarranted levels of greed is that it is a much younger industry. It's been around for a shorter period of time, although in that time it has already come to the conclusion that it doesn't need to worry about what faithful fan gamers really want. Like the pharmaceutical industry, it now only wants to concern itself with making more money than it did the year before. Now sure, that's the mantra for any business. I get that. But it wasn't enough for EA to make tens of millions of dollars from game sales of FIFA 18 alone. It also had to go and actively prey on the addictive nature of mankind to make a further $1.68 billion in microtransaction revenue for the financial year of 2017. For such a young industry to already make considerably more money than Hollywood on the strength of its games alone, a picture of how unnecessary microtransactions are starts to take shape. In its opening week, Far Cry 5 made more money than Black Panther. The games industry as a whole, including mobile, is currently worth around $80 billion, where the movie industry is way below at around $35 billion, which is hilarious when you consider it's probably a safe bet that there's a lot less gamers out there than there are moviegoers. When you have these systems that developers say you don't have to spend money on, that are purposely built to reward you with shit, no matter how hard you work in the game, they are counting on your payday. Say today is payday, you've just been paid, and you've been trying to get this one particular item for a long time, and you just say sod it, and you end up paying for it instead. As much as we all love to complain about microtransactions, this is one massive reason they're not going away. Tens of millions of people around the planet, rich or not, are simultaneously saying sod it and spending a mere $3 or so each. And it's not just FIFA that is absolutely raking it in. To compare again to the movie industry, James Cameron's Avatar is the highest grossing film of all time. And since its release, GTA 5 has made at least 3 times its profit with its GTA Online microtransactions. There may have been an uproar about Battlefront 2, leading to many developers now proudly announcing that future DLCs will be free, but emerging from the ashes, microtransactions are creeping in again, and this time into Fallout 76. How will they make the world of Fallout 76 feel, I wonder? Will they go for hundreds of small items that genuinely fit with the universe of Fallout, or will they take the easier route to churn out items of the silly, fun kind of appeal, arriving in every colour of the spectrum? I mean, that's not the Fallout feel. The cynic in both you and I have already answered the question as to which way it will go, as in a few months' time the wasteland of Washington will be replete with real players wearing green hats and glowing chest armour. Like I said, that's not Fallout, and so we come full circle to this concept of the death of real creativity in the AAA space. Unlike the gaming days of no internet, developers no longer use their imagination and creativity, their incredible ability to think outside the box, as mechanics for survival in the industry. The passion is no longer needed. They can no longer fall back on what I'm sure is still a great pool of creativity that they possess in their minds. Is it any wonder older games are so fondly remembered remembered, and remakes like Ratchet & Clank, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Wipeout have all done so well. The industry knows you miss those days, and in the instance of these games, they get to make money all over again. And the people are happy too. That one is a double win. Now, for the survival of a developer's studio, the continuation of their jobs and to keep their families fed, they must listen to their publisher overlords that will get their game out there. A massive portion of development resources and manpower is poured into a system in the pursuit not of entertainment or creativity, but just straight money and nothing else. The passion developers may have remains wasted, as their creative ideas remain in their heads, and there they will stay while they graft away on the online systems and money-making plans their masters have forced upon them. And this is why many an online commenter is known to say microtransactions are the cancer of the games industry. Indeed, the greed for money is all-encompassing, creativity and originality be damned. On the flip side, this has led to great levels of freedom and creativity and originality in the indie space, where developers are freely and independently creating the games they want to create. Like Hellblade. Could you imagine taking a proposition for a Hellblade concept to someone like EA and trying to get it greenlit? EA would say that it's not really applicable enough to a wide enough audience, there aren't enough people that are going to like it, so no, you can't even begin working on it. But because they were independent, they were able to make an exceptional game. And the only real exception to the rule in AAA space that I can think of is CD Projekt Red, and surprise surprise, they are universally loved for the work that they do independently. For the independent developers that don't absolutely smash it out of the park, the next trap is to get a publishing deal to support their greater ambitions for the next game. And this has clearly happened to Ninja Theory, as they are now owned by Microsoft, and unlike Hellblade, their next game has a chance of containing microtransactions for this reason alone. And I'll bet when you see the news articles popping up saying, oh my word, Ninja Theory are suddenly playing around with microtransactions, this will likely be the reason why. Where things get particularly bothersome is the case of Capcom bringing microtransactions into Devil May Cry 5, where Capcom have previously had a history of independence and a lack of microtransactions. Again, like Fallout 76, how will Devil May Cry 5 feel overall as a result? Will this decision have taken away from the developer resources a little, leading to a game that is a little less polished than the previous Devil May Crys as we would expect? And upon that little musing there, I realise that I am now beginning to go round in circles, so I will leave things there. I would say go ahead and leave your comments below, but with a topic like this, I don't think I really need to ask you, do I? I do watch my comments, so go ahead and talk to me if the urge takes you. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to click subscribe. My videos aren't normally going to be like this. I understand this was a little bit grey and grim, but what gaming channel would be complete without a good old rant on microtransactions? These are my thoughts, and chunky as they are, I didn't want to drip feed snide little comments about it across all my videos. It seemed better to just get it all out of my system in one go. I also want to say that I'm aware I've made some comments that may seem like generalizations and sweeping statements, so before you come at me with your keyboard rage, please check out those supporting articles in the description below. I'm your channel host, Nick, signing out for now. Continue to be good to each other, guys. I hope to see you on the next game sesh. Peace.